June 19th, 1904, near Saint-Lô, Normandy. The thunder of artillery rolls through the French countryside as smoke rises from shattered hedgerows. A group of weary German soldiers, their grey uniforms caked with mud and exhaustion, stumble from the tree line with their hands raised. Private Otto Keller, 19 years old and trembling, clutches a tattered bread bag as he's surrounded by American infantrymen of the 29th Division. "Drop the Mauser, Hände hoch," shouts Sergeant William Harris, his M1 Garand levelled, but his tone calm, measured. Keller obeys. Around him, the remnants of the 352nd Infantry Division surrender one by one, men who have fought without food, without ammunition, without hope. Within hours, the captured Germans are herded into a temporary holding area behind American lines. They expect brutality. They've heard rumours from Nazi propaganda about Yankee cruelty, of prisoners beaten, starved or shot. But what greets them is astonishingly ordinary. An American corporal handing out cigarettes, a medic tending to a wounded man, even a soldier offering a canteen of clean water. For many of these young men, this is their first sip of mercy in years. As dusk falls over the fields of Normandy, a convoy of olive-drab trucks arrives to transport the prisoners. Each truck is marked with white stars and filled with the dull hum of diesel and whispered disbelief. They are headed not to a dungeon, but to a place none of them can yet imagine. The American homeland itself. The long journey begins. Across the Channel to England, then aboard Liberty ships bound westward through the U-boat-patrolled Atlantic. It is a voyage of uncertainty. Some fear execution, others forced labour. Yet when they finally disembark weeks later under the sweltering sun of the American South, the first thing they notice isn't barbed wire. It's the smell of fresh bread. August 2nd, 1944, Camp Swift, Texas. The sun blazes across the open plains as the train grinds to a halt. Through slatted wooden windows, the German POWs glimpse endless rows of pine trees and a sprawling compound of wooden barracks. To their surprise, the guards aren't shouting. They're chatting, laughing, even offering cigarettes as they unload the men one by one. Private Otto Keller squints against the light, blinking at the sight of a banner over the entrance gate. U.S. Army Prisoner of War Camp, Camp Swift. It feels less like a prison and more like a small town. Inside the camp, the order is astonishing. Wooden bunks lined in perfect symmetry, mess halls with the smell of coffee, even a small chapel and a baseball field shimmering under the Texas heat. The prisoners exchange glances. "Ist das America?" one whispers. "Ja, America." Later that day, a Red Cross officer arrives with parcels, each containing chocolate, cigarettes, canned milk, and soap. For men who had gone weeks on thin rations in France, the sight feels surreal. Sergeant Heinrich Bauer, a former baker from Hamburg, holds a bar of chocolate as if it's sacred. This is for us?" he mutters in disbelief. Meals come regularly. Clean water runs freely. And though the compound is enclosed by wire, no one is beaten, no one is cursed. The Americans even allow a band, a lager orchestra, to rehearse on Sundays. By the end of the week, Keller finds himself assigned to kitchen duty, scrubbing metal trays while a friendly Texan guard named Corporal Jenkins hums Glenn Miller tunes beside him. "You boys like ice cream?" Jenkins asks one afternoon, grinning. The Germans glance at each other, puzzled. "Ace?" Bauer asks cautiously. Minutes later, they're handed scoops of vanilla ice cream melting under the summer sun. Keller tastes it, sweet, cold, impossibly smooth. And for a moment, the war feels like a memory fading into the distance. As night falls, the prisoners sit quietly outside their barracks, listening to the distant croak of cicadas. Somewhere beyond the wire, they hear laughter. American soldiers playing baseball, their voices carefree. Keller stares up at the stars and murmurs, "If this is captivity, what does freedom even mean?" Autumn 1944. The leaves turn golden across the camp perimeter as the days grow cooler, yet the routine remains steady. Every morning, the prisoners rise at 6 a.m. to the sound of a bugle. Roll call. Breakfast, oatmeal, bread, and sometimes bacon. Then work details. Farm labour, lumber mills, or repairing roads under the watchful but easygoing eyes of American guards. To the Germans, it feels almost unreal. Corporal Hans Richter, once a panzer mechanic near Caen, finds himself repairing tractors for a Texas rancher. The old farmer, chewing on a piece of straw, pats him on the back after a good day's work. "You fix things fast, boy," he says kindly. Hans nods, smiling awkwardly. It's a simple exchange, but one that chips away at years of Nazi indoctrination. Back in the barracks, evenings bring a kind of peace few of them have known. The men write letters home on Red Cross stationery, read donated books, or play chess carved from soap and buttons. A camp newspaper even circulates, Der Ruf, The Call, filled with poetry, essays, and quiet reflections on what the war has become. And then there are the luxuries no one had expected. Coca-Cola bottles passed out on Sundays, ice cream after long days in the fields. American GIs often joke with the prisoners, "Don't get too used to it, Fritz." But there's no malice in their words. For some POWs, the hospitality is disorienting. One night, Sergeant Bauer confides to Keller, "If the Führer saw this, he'd call it weakness, but I call it humanity." Letters from home tell a different story. Cities reduced to rubble, families hungry, brothers still fighting in the east. The contrast gnaws at them. They live better here, as captives, than many civilians in Germany do as free men. Psychologists later called it re-education through exposure. By treating prisoners humanely, the US quietly dismantled fascist ideology. Many POWs began to question everything they'd been taught. By winter, the men had grown stronger, healthier, even content. Christmas arrives with music and laughter. Guards distribute small gifts, socks, tobacco, chocolate. A few POWs perform a nativity play in the rec hall. When snow flurries dust the Texas ground, Keller murmurs, "It almost feels like home." But beneath the comfort lies a strange melancholy, a realization that someday this will end. And not everyone will want to return to the ruins that once were Germany. Spring 1945. Across the Atlantic, Germany is collapsing. News trickles into Camp Swift through newspapers, Red Cross bulletins, and the whispers of guards. Berlin is encircled. Hitler's fate is uncertain. And for the men behind the wire, the silence after dinner feels heavier than ever. Private Otto Keller sits on his bunk, holding a folded photograph of his mother and younger sister. "What will be left?" he asks quietly. Sergeant Bauer, sitting opposite, only shakes his head. "Not much, I think, but perhaps something better can grow." The camp's radio crackles with jazz one afternoon when an announcement interrupts. Germany has surrendered unconditionally. For a moment, there's no reaction, just stunned faces, the sound of the wind through the barracks. Then some cheer softly, others lower their heads in shame or relief. One man mutters, "Der Krieg ist vorbei." Finally, a few days later, the Americans organize a victory dinner. The POWs are invited, not to celebrate defeat, but to share in peace. Long tables are set up in the mess hall, decorated with red, white, and blue ribbons. On each tray, roast beef, mashed potatoes, and, to the prisoners' amazement, Coca-Cola and ice cream. A US chaplain stands before them and says, "You fought for your country, we fought for ours. But tonight, we eat as men who want no more graves." Keller raises his spoon to his lips. The ice cream melts instantly, the sweetness mixing with salt tears he doesn't try to hide. Around him, laughter and cautious smiles fill the air. For the first time, he feels something closer to forgiveness than surrender. Weeks pass, and the war in Europe is officially over. The men expect to be shipped home, but logistics delay repatriation. Some are sent north to other camps, Iowa, Nebraska, even Wisconsin. Everywhere they go, it's the same. Clean food, kind treatment, fair work. American civilians, too, are surprised. At local farms, women bring pies or lemonade to POW work details. Children sneak peeks at the enemy, discovering they look ordinary. And for the Germans, every act of kindness is another wound to their old beliefs. The propaganda about America's cruelty collapses with every handshake and shared meal. By the end of the summer, the camp orchestra is playing American tunes. Evenings echo with laughter, harmonicas, and the soft fizz of Coca-Cola bottles popping open under the stars. Keller writes in his journal, "In Germany, we were soldiers. Here, we are simply men again." December 1945. Camp Swift stands quiet under a cold, winter sky. Most of the guard towers are empty now, the floodlights dimmed. The war is over, and ships are ready to return thousands of prisoners across the Atlantic. Yet inside the camp, not everyone is eager to leave. Otto Keller wakes early, folding his thin blanket neatly, his hands trembling slightly. For the first time in months, he feels dread, not from gunfire, but from uncertainty. Home. What does that word even mean now? Germany lies in ruins. Cities bombed beyond recognition. His father's last letter ended abruptly in 1943. His sister may not even be alive. A voice calls from the yard. "Alle antreten." Final roll call. The men file out, faces pale in the dawn light. An American sergeant, Jenkins, stands nearby with his clipboard. He's been here since the beginning. Joking, supervising, never cruel. He looks at the group with a faint smile. "Well, boys, guess this is goodbye." Bauer steps forward, his voice rough with emotion. "You treated us like men, not enemies. I will never forget that." Jenkins removes his cap, scratches his head. "War's a nasty business, Sergeant, but peace." He glances toward the horizon. Peace is a choice. When the trucks arrive, Keller turns back one last time. Behind him, the baseball field lies empty, the barracks quiet. He remembers the first time he saw the camp, the smell of bread, the shock of cold ice cream on his tongue, the laughter of guards who didn't hate him. Now, leaving feels like walking away from something sacred. The journey home is long. The Liberty ship creaks under winter storms. In the hold, men huddle in silence, clutching Red Cross rations, chocolate bars, canned fruit, cigarettes. For years, they dreamed of return. But now, many whisper the same thought. They didn't want to go home. When the ship docks at Bremerhaven, Germany looks like a ghost of itself. Rubble, smoke. A people hollowed out by war and ideology. Yet as Keller steps ashore, he carries something fragile but real, a new understanding of humanity. In the following months, thousands of former POWs rebuild their lives. Some become bakers, teachers, carpenters. Others write memoirs, telling stories of compassion found behind barbed wire. Many form the backbone of a new democratic Germany, men who had seen both hate and kindness and chose the latter. Years later, when asked by a journalist what he remembered most about captivity, Otto Keller smiled faintly and said, "Coca-Cola and ice cream. Not because they were sweet, but because they showed us what decency tastes like." The screen fades to black.